victim. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
News Talk 1090 is the talk of Muskegon.
Welcome. You're listening to the Renegade River Show, and my name is Mike Hewitt. And today in the studio with us is our co-host, Jim Riley.
Hey, good morning, folks. Good morning, Muskegon and West Michigan.
Welcome back, Jim.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting.
Folks, somewhere during the show today, we're going to have State Representative Mike Shirkey call in, and he's going to explain to us his he's the fellow that advanced the Medicaid expansion bill, or as I affectionately refer to it, the Obama-Snyder Medicaid explosion bill. He advanced it through the State House, and we're expecting him to give us a call to talk about his reasoning for doing that. But Jim, on that topic, what's your opinion?
Now, you're talking about expanding Medicaid coverage in the state of Michigan by, 400 to 600,000 additional people. Is that the bill?
That's what I understand it.
And
yeah.
that is the bill that the Republican-controlled State House of Representatives has already passed, and yet the Republican-controlled State Senate decided to defer a vote on. I believe it's a bad idea. I think encouraging more and more people to get on to free government anything is a bad idea for any number of reasons. But to me, the prime reason, and I know Oscar has mentioned this before, and we talked about it even off air in the past, is once you get on a government program, you almost become a prisoner of these various programs, because if you have an opportunity to get a new job or to get a promotion, or maybe your spouse gets a job and your family income has got a chance to go up, which allows you to climb up that ladder of the American dream, that you have to look at what you're going to lose in government gifts. And many, many people have said, oh my golly, I really can't afford this new job or this raise because it's going to actually result in less money to my family. So instead of trying to make myself better, instead of trying to engage and embrace the American dream, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to stay with the government programs, and to the detriment of everyone, because of course people who just get the government programs are not contributing in terms of taxes and things of that sort, and most certainly to the detriment of themselves. So no, I'm not for this program, and there are any number of reasons that we'll maybe touch on, but no, I think it's a bad idea, and I do hope that our Republican senator here in Muskegon County, Senator Hansen, who when presented with a Muskegon County Republican Party press release that said that Muskegon County Republicans are against this expansion, and we hope that our senator will listen to us and will vote against it. He came out with a relatively lengthy statement that said absolutely nothing. In essence, he said he hadn't made up his mind, which is really what I think most people, Democrat and Republican, hate about our electeds. Let us know what you think. I don't know what's going on. If you don't know what's going on, then maybe stop collecting a paycheck.
I got to tell you, I agree with everything you said. I will tell you that, and I am hoping that Rep. Shirkey calls in, because he's one of the few people, even though him and I abundantly disagree on this issue, he's one of the few elected officials who will stand up and say, this is why I did it. Now,
yes.
Now, having said that...
And I respect that a lot.
I really do. Having said all of that, though, when I look at the Medicaid expansion bill and I try to rationalize it out, the only way that I can do it, in fact, I used to work for this fella. He used to say, sometimes you got to get up to about 5,000 feet before you can see what you're really talking about. And so when I look at it from 5,000 feet, to use his analogy, what I see about Medicaid is a snapshot. When Medicaid first came into being, the year was 1965, and the health care costs in the United States were about 5% of the average income in America. That's what health care costs represented. And my numbers only go through 2009, but in 2009, it had soared up to 30.3%. That's a huge chunk of a person's income. And the only time during that 40-some-year trend that it plateaued, it never rescinded, by the way. It never went backwards, but the only time that it plateaued was during the welfare reform era, when the Republicans controlled the Senate and the House in the 90s, and Bill Clinton was president. And we went, I don't know if you recall, but we went through a massive welfare reform effort during that period.
That was pushed by Newt Gingrich in the Republican Revolution back then.
It exactly was, but it's literally between 1965 and 2009, that 4 or 5 year window is the only time that it plateaued. And so when I listen, see, to me when you try to say what do these numbers actually mean, you can compare it to the minimum wage in Michigan. So the unions look at minimum wage and set it up as a floor, and that causes our hourly wages to be a little bit higher than a number of other states. And so the hospitals, when they look at Medicaid and what's approvable, they set that up as their floor. So when I was in the hospital at U of M 3 years ago, my 6-day stay cost $90,000. And so and you've heard me say this on the show before, I think we've been asking the wrong question. I think that Representative Shirkey was asking the wrong question. And I'm not blaming him, I just think he's wrong. And what I mean when I say that is, rather than us trying to figure out how do we pay for a $9, think about this, an individual Motrin tablet in an overnight stay, on average they charge $9 for it. An individual, a single cotton ball, on average, is the equivalent of a $6 charge. And rather than us saying, oh my goodness, what can we do, how are we going to pay for that, we should be saying, you know what, we're not going to do that. Now, Representative Shirkey, I moderated a meeting last week, and his view of it was that the hospitals are wrestling with costs as it is. My view is very polarizing, the very opposite of that. When I look at what's going on in our healthcare industry, even their non-tech employees are making more than the marketplaces that they're sitting in. It's like they don't have to manage their money properly. The meeting I was at, Cal Dykstra, who's a physician, was there, and he said, wait a minute. His retort to the idea that hospitals are fighting with their costs, Dr. Dykstra said, no, they're expanding constantly. And then I again, back at 5,000 feet, when I look at it, I said, what has government touched since 1965? And let's see if we can see any trends. Government since 1965 has dwelled really, really hard into education. They've taken it mostly from states. They've reduced the local school board, in my opinion, down to a board that decides what to do with the banner money. And they've taken over a curriculum analysis, who's going to buy what books from where.
What kind of food that they're going to sell in the cafeteria.
So when I say, now wait a minute, when I look at the cost of health care, I got to tell you, I tie it right back to the old, that unintended consequences, wasn't that the name of the book? To me, when I look at health care costs, when I look at education costs, all these things, I hope they're unintended consequences, but the charges for all of it, everything that's government's tried to meddle with, has soared through the roof, because there's no interaction with the citizens. So I've used the example before. I've talked about if you went into a car dealership and you said, how much is the Ford Focus? And they said, it's $5 million. And you said, $5 million, that's insane. And then the salesman says, what do you care? You're not paying for it. Well, that's the health care in America right now. And for whatever reason, our State House of Representatives thinks that not only do they think that's a good idea, but they want to up it. They want to up the ante of it. And I'm saying absolutely not.
Let me just repeat some of the things that another state representative, Ray France, from actually out here in West Michigan, had very specifically responded as to his vote, which was against the expansion of Medicaid in the state of Michigan. And there's some practical reasons why he said no. He said, first off, it's very likely that this subsidized health benefit, where it's third-party payer, in other words, somebody else pays, and as you just very correctly said, the customers in this case will not be paying it, so they don't care what it costs. Could be as high as $600,000, perhaps even more. But here's the problem. This benefit will start out as a 6-month benefit for free. Then the people who have signed up for it and perhaps locked themselves out because they've said, I've got to keep under a certain income from getting new jobs or raises, then those individuals or those families will have to start paying for the free benefit. Now, many, many people are not going to understand, hey, I've got something free for just a short period of time, and then boom, I'm going to have to start paying it. We're going to start seeing waivers. We're going to start seeing these unintended consequences that we all know will for sure result. But then there's supposed to be a 48-month limit. And at that time, either the benefits will end or the benefits will be severely reduced. Now, Representative Franz says, and I totally concur, said, there's no political will to take people who are on Medicare, to take them off Medicare. Can you imagine the headlines? Can you imagine the cruel Republicans? Can you imagine the interviews with, a single mom and her 3 kids in the trailer park in Holton? They're going to lose their medical. There is absolutely no political will to end this. Once this program, just like every other program that the feds, the states, the county have enacted, they stay forever. And therein lies the problem. We're being lied to by saying, number one, we're saying, hey, it's free for 6 months, and it's got a finite limit. Now, the other part of it is that this is supposed to be paid for by the federal government, almost in total, except at some point the federal government says that they can pull out. What happens when the federal government pulls out? Well, the state either has to come up with the money, or somebody else does, or the mean, heartless Republicans will be again cursed with, how dare you take away that health benefit that's so necessary for the poor little mother. And let's we got the mother in Holton, and then we got the mother in Muskegon Heights. So they'll be side by side, equal opportunity evilness coming from our politicians. Once you're in these programs, you almost never get off.
I'll tell you this about all of that. To me, when I look at the Medicaid expansion or explosion, as I refer to it as, here in Michigan, and by the way, everybody, it's happening not just here in Michigan, but there's a push in every state in the union, and this is the Obama administration. So when we're thinking that it's Representative Shirkey or it's something going on in the House of Representatives, it's actually the Obama administration, and they're pushing it literally, and you can get on the internet and Google it, you'll see that this dialogue is happening in more states than it's not. To me, it's either one of two things. It's either a supplement of Obamacare, or what I refer to as Marxist care. So our expanded Medicaid will supplement Obamacare, unless Obamacare fails. And if it does, then this expansion will grow even greater. It will become a replacement for what was going to be Obamacare.
Well, I agree, and that's almost guaranteed to happen. There's another thing here. If somebody guaranteed you a brand new Ford Focus, but it didn't have an engine, and you didn't know that, and it cost the $5 million, you might say, well, I'll take that Ford Focus, and oops, what a bummer that it doesn't have an engine, even though it ended up costing $5 million. Here is the problem. I have been, I had some minor health problems, and I've been to labs, and I've been to various other doctor's offices. What I'm seeing popping up all over the places are signs that are saying, we do not accept Medicaid, and even some places here in Muskegon County saying we do not accept Medicare. And there's a reason for that. These aren't heartless doctors. These aren't nasty people. What happens is Medicare and Medicaid essentially reimburse the hospitals and the doctors at 47% of the billable amount. Now, because of the way life is, many of these bills have been bumped up in order to offset the 47%. But the facts are simple. Physicians, nurses, hospitals, all of the people who are involved in this business are getting out of providing that service because the free service that's out there doesn't cover their bills. So if you have free medical, just like the Ford Focus with no engine, Ford Focus isn't going to start without an engine, folks. And if you've got free medical but you've got no place to get it, or you've got to wait in line, or you've got to wait like they do in almost every single other socialist country that has embraced free medical, you are going to wait and wait and wait and wait. And therein lies, again, the ultimate destruction of medical for most of the people in this country, except for the rich. We know that the President of the United States and all of the retired presidents and their families, we know that the Senate and the House have exempted themselves from these programs. They have their own special programs. In other words, these programs that they're telling us we ought to expand are so good, they've made sure that they never have to know firsthand how they work.
It's a fascinating thing. When I look back and try to drill back down to the local level and say, how is this going to affect us going forward, other than the fact that obviously healthcare costs is going to go up. If this passes, healthcare will go up, but something else is going to happen. If this goes through, what will happen is you're going to see some primaries happening across the state of Michigan.
You mean primary challenges to Republicans?
Absolutely. Is that Representative Shirkey?
I profusely apologize, Mike. I set my alarm on my phone, but then I put the dang phone on silent when I was at church this morning, and I forgot to take it off. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. The only thing is, just understand, Mike, that I'm not letting you off at 12:35 now.
You have as much time as you need, sir.
I won't abuse it. Listen, it's good that you called in right when you did, so you can defend yourself. How long do we have, Oscar? One. Yeah, you know what? I'm running up against a hard break right now.
That's okay.
I want you,
wait.
if you would stay through about 3 or 4 minutes of commercials, and listeners, we'll be back, and we'll have some fun with Representative Shirkey. We'll
Okay, Mike, thank you.
We'll be right back, everybody. Yeah.
Be a survivor, not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station at downtown Spring Lake.
The summer's in full swing, the kids are out of school, and this is the time to make your big escape from the office, from home, and the day-to-day grind. But if you're like me, there's always at least some work to do. And here's where GoToMeeting with HD Faces saves the day. The powerful, simple way to meet, collaborate, stay in touch, and on top of things, online. GoToMeeting by Citrix only takes one click to share your screen and work on documents in real time. Use your webcam to instantly turn your meeting into a real HD video conference. Everyone's there, face-to-face, just like meeting in person. On a Mac, a PC, your phone, and now you can even host and present on your iPad. I can't do without GoToMeeting with HD Faces. Start hosting your own face-to-face online meetings today with GoToMeeting. Try it free for 30 days. For this special offer, visit GoToMeeting.com, click on the Try It Free button, and use promo code KIM. Be sure to use the promo code KIM. That's GoToMeeting.com. Try it free today.
Hi everyone, Jay Farner here with Quicken Loans. Today's mortgage rates are just about the lowest that we've ever experienced. But because these super low rates fluctuate, Quicken Loans has a great new way for you to find out what the current mortgage rate is for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage right this instant. Just pick up your mobile phone and text the word RATES to AMAZE. Text RATES to 26293 to see the latest mortgage rate on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Again, simply text RATES to AMAZE. That's RATES to 26293. At Quicken Loans, we always provide you with the latest technology designed to give you an amazing mortgage experience. Maybe that's why for 3 years in a row now, J.D. Power & Associates has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Again, text RATES to AMAZE 26293 and discover for yourself why Quicken Loans is engineered to amaze.
Standard text messaging rates apply. For J.D. Power & Associates award information, visit jdpower.com. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Jim is 38, mortgage, married, 3 great kids. He wants to protect his family with a $500,000 term life insurance policy. What do you think it will cost him? $100 a month? 60? 40? Actually, none of the above. Jim is in excellent health and can get a 10-year, $500,000 policy through SelectQuote for under $19 a month. Jim's wife, Deidre, 36 and also in great health, can get a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $16 a month. See how much you can save.
For a free quote, call 1-800-947-3602. That's 1-800-947-3602. 1-800-947-3602. Or go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Get full details on the example policies at SelectQuote.com/commercials. Your premium could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
Renegade River in Spring Lake wants to buy your used handguns and hunting guns. Renegade River, your hunting, camping, and survival store. Stop in and check out their new and used firearms, sporting goods, Army and Navy supplies, and survival gear. Downtown Spring Lake, next to the police station.
The Talk of Muskegon. News Talk 1090, WKBZ.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to the Renegade River Show, and my name is Mike Hewitt. My sometimes co-host, Jim Riley, is in the studio with us, and on the telephone we've got State Representative Mike Shirkey from the District 65. Mike, welcome back to the show. I appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, again, I apologize for being delinquent, Mike, but thanks for showing some grace. I appreciate it.
You're not going to butter me up with that kind of stuff. We still disagree, Mike.
Yeah.
Hey, while we waited for you to call in, we spent the first 15 or 20 minutes or so bashing the policies you've advanced. I say that with a smile, tongue in cheek, so you know I'm not being mean-spirited. But where I wanted to get you going at before I let you explain your position is I'm looking at a graph, and it shows that in 1965, healthcare costs at the time of the average median income was 5%, and over the years since then, well, this only goes through 2009, but at that point it had peaked up above 30%. Mike, the only time it plateaued was during the Clinton administration when Gingrich and company, during the revolution, and they were doing the welfare rollback, etc. That is the only 4 or 5 year period that it plateaued in this entire time. So it causes a fellow like me and probably like Jim to say, what are we thinking? So tell us what we're thinking.
Well, it's a legitimate question, and the fact of the matter is, as long as we have systems in this country where people receive their insurance, but they're not an actual consumer, and that's the majority of the market, of course, the commercial market. We are going to continue to have spikes and steep increases in healthcare costs because there's no connection between utilization and cost for the majority of people who are covered by insurance in this country. So there's no surprise to me that happened, and it's going to continue to happen until we, as I said when I shared with you at the meeting we had in West Hollywood, I think it was, that until we change the federal laws that allow employers, allow individual people to deduct from their income their expenses for health insurance and health costs, and then which allow employers then to convert their health expenses to wage increases and make the entire nation consumers. Until that happens, we're on a Obamacare or no Obamacare, we're on a raging curve of increasing healthcare costs because there's no connection between utilization and cost.
Mike, I think you'll find that most of us here in the studio agree with you 100%, as do I think most Republicans. If that's true, though, if in fact that the cost explosion is a direct result of third-party payer, why would you want to vote, or why have you, in fact, voted to expand and put more people involved in the third-party payer conundrum that you just very convincingly outlined as the almost sole reason for the disaster that we sit in with today?
Right. So the way I concluded it, I'm not going to use the word complex because you've already warned me about that. But the way I frankly changed my opinion on it, because I was for almost 3 years a very outspoken opponent of both Obamacare and Medicaid expansion, is when I discovered that when the Supreme Court decided to not make it a mandate, and that gave states, that kind of leveled the playing field and gave states an opportunity to really leverage their position and get their own definition of their own state Medicaid system with the federal government, because regardless of how you look at it, I don't think Medicaid's going away. Even if we didn't expand, it's not going away. And this gave us an opportunity to negotiate from a position of strength and get some reforms and some redefining of what Medicaid in Michigan does. But the other thing, part of it, Mike and Jim, is when Obamacare fails, it's not a question in my mind of if it's okay, but when it fails, so will the funding of the expanded population, and therefore it will stop. If, however, we are all wrong, and it doesn't fail, and it stays in place, then, and you're going to disagree with this, but the expansion to this working poor, I'll call them, of up to a little over 100% of the poverty level, actually mitigates or reduces taxpayer liability over the long haul. And the reason for that is that it'll be way more expensive for premium subsidies on the exchange if Obamacare doesn't fail than it will be to cover this limited defined population with Michigan's Medicaid system.
Mike, we're being told that Michigan's roads are a mess and there's no money available for the roads. Therefore, I know the Republicans and certainly the Republican governor have been very loud in saying, hey, we need tax increases of some sort. Anybody who drives on the roads agrees that there's a problem. So there's a serious shortage of money. We're going to expand Medicare coverage to 400 to 600 to some very significant number of people who, in fact, have not been going and getting free medical. Where's the money going to come from?
Well, the first 3 years, it comes from taxes that we're going to be sending to Washington, whether we expand or not. And after that, if the federal government decides to reduce the reimbursement or they eliminate the taxes that they're extracting from us in Michigan, then we have a choice. The legislature has a choice to make. They conclude that the savings is enough to offset the increased cost of the state of Michigan, or the program stops. And I want to put a special emphasis on that because the way the language is written, that it happens without action. So it would require the legislature, whoever's serving at the time, both the House, the Senate, and the governor, to actually take affirmative action and pass yet another bill to have it continue if the savings don't equal or exceed whatever increased contribution requirements are required by the state of Michigan and the federal government.
Ray Francis has suggested, Representative France has suggested that there won't be the political will to allow this to just disappear, even though that's what the feds say will happen. And I would suggest that there's a significant support in his comment because there is no we're going to take it away from you now support, and yet there are votes coming from you and others to vote for it. I don't believe for a second, and I seriously doubt you do too, that 3 years from now, if in fact this program needs funding, and if in fact the federal money isn't there, that Republicans will be able to resist the pressure from the media not to keep it going again. My gosh, that pressure doesn't exist now, and you're creating it. Are you really telling me that you're strong enough and comfortable enough in your reelection and your compatriots within the House and the Senate would be absolutely having no trouble whatsoever in cutting 600-some thousand people off of Medicaid 3 years from now?
So this is Jim, right?
Yes, it's Jim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I don't make decisions based on whether I'm going to get reelected or not. I do it based on the information I have available and do my very best possible analysis. And, sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. I hope I'm right more often than I'm wrong. But secondly, we already have a history, Jim, of making those kinds of decisions when it comes to this Medicaid population in Michigan. There have been plenty of times over the last 15 years in particular where from budget year to budget year we've reduced spending and reduced benefits to the Medicaid population and for that part of the Department of Community Health budget because of budget shortfalls. So I think there's already a history of being willing to do that. Now, those who speculate that nobody will have the will to do that, well, I guess their crystal ball is a lot clearer than mine. I can guarantee you that. Oh, I shouldn't say that on the air, should I? I can guarantee you that that's the reason, by the way, that the determination point for the second waiver, the important waiver of really causing people to have been on for more than 48 months to have to make a different decision. That's the reason why that waiver is required to be approved by December 31st, 2015, because for the majority of the folks that are currently serving, they'll be still serving if they get reelected. And so we're not passing off that very critical decision point to a future legislature. That was something that I was rather adamant about because the governor's office wanted to let that go to 2016 and 2017, and I said, no, we're going to do it with the people, with the exception of those who are term limited right now. We're going to be making that decision with those who are, currently serving. So I'm not going to argue with you because some may not have the political will and the intestinal fortitude, but I will.
Mike, let me ask you if we can to head down a slight different path for a moment.
Right.
And I'm not advancing this as a proposal, so don't think I'm crazy when I do it. But just for funsies,
yep.
If we were to determine what the average cost of health care is for the people in that would be included in your expansion package if it becomes law,
yeah.
Determine what the average cost is, and then just to pick a number, let's say it's $6,000 a year. It doesn't make a difference to me what the number is for the sake of my the conversation I want to have. But let's say it's $6,000, and so rather than giving these folks $6,000, what if we gave them $5,000 that could only be used for health care, but that at the end of the year, if they had any of it left, they could have it as cash? Let me ask you, if you had a program like that, do you think health care costs would go down or up, sir?
So instead of covering them on Medicaid system, you'd provide them with basically a cash grant.
You give them a Visa, give them a Visa card that's got cash on it that can only be used at a medical facility.
And these are individuals that are making these decisions.
Yep,
not,
it's a citizen. It's citizens. I trust citizens, don't you?
Actually, the way you framed that question, I would say that there's probably very little cost pressure applied, and I don't think costs would go down.
Costs would go down, because if I know at the end of the year I'm going to get some of this back, I'm going to try to negotiate. And right now, if you call your doctor and he wants $85 and you say, hey, I'll give you $50, he thinks you're on drugs. But he doesn't care, because there's so many people that are right behind you trying to get in there to see him. There's absolutely no capitalism in our current medical industry whatsoever, none. That's how they can afford to pay a dental hygienist that's working part-time $30 an hour. You think, wait a minute, how can this possibly be that this system is that derailed? And my answer to you is because we've extracted capitalism, and with all due respect, we've replaced it with socialism, and it doesn't work. So we think the answer to it is to inject more socialism into it, and that's not the answer, Mike.
Well, the Michigan's Medicaid system does have a fair amount of capitalism in it. And I'm not going to represent to you that's perfect, but virtually, all of the proposed expanded population would be covered by capitated health plans that are bid on by HMOs, and they take serious risk. In other words, they're privately held for private companies, and they have a great incentive to make sure that they're doing it, the right way, so that they don't lose money. I would stipulate to you that the rest of the fee-for-service population within Medicaid do have the same maladies that you just described, and that's another piece of the legislation that people kind of just overlook. But we are requiring the Department of Community Health to basically convert everybody, with the exception of those that are not that you can't do because of a federal law, to convert everybody to a contracted capitated health plan, again, to drive more, not perfect, but more market-based decision-making into the cost of health care for this population. So it's not just the expanded ones, but also the existing eligible ones as well.
I'm certain I'm approaching this too simplistically, but when I look at $9 Motrin tablets for an in-hospital stay, or $6 cotton balls, or my $90,000 6-day stay at U of M, Mike, respectfully, there's no capitalism in that. If I had a choice, I would have shopped it, but they're all the same rate, and the reason they're all the same rate is because insurance companies, Medicaid, Medicare, etc., are so regulated that it's a prescribed program. And you'd said at the meeting that I was the moderator at, you'd said then that some of these medical facilities were having a tough time keeping their costs in check, and they'd expressed that to you evidently. And at the time, I kind of smiled. I thought, no. I was with Dr. Dykstra that night, who said they're expanding exponentially, and they are, and they're doing it, frankly, at the expense of citizenry. Well,
that's a kind of a different topic, and a fun topic to debate. But I'm not sure that it gets us down the road to where you want to go to in terms of talking about this Medicaid reform and expansion.
Mike, got a question. You suggested that, this is Jim Riley, that the federal government is essentially going to pick up the entire bill. In other words, if we don't spend it, someone else will, or actually the feds will have to borrow it, since they don't have any real cash available. But you just finished mentioning that the Department of Social Services, or what have you, certain departments within the state will have to get involved. Will those additional costs be picked up by the federal grants in this, or is that a separately accounted for item?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. Are you referring to me when I said that the department has to convert all of the fee-for-service Medicaid enrollees to capitated health plans? Is that what you're referring to?
No. There's two facets to the expansion, or probably more than two, but two that I'll refer to. One is, of course, just the absolute medical care that you're going to go into a clinic or a doctor's office or what have you. But then there's the other where the state of Michigan will have to provide state employees and probably county employees to vet the various people to process their paperwork and make sure that they're eligible. So in other words, there are two separate accounting areas that if you ran a business, you would account for separately. Does this free money that we would be giving up, does this free money cover the additional cost to administer the program at the state and county and city levels, as it apparently does to pay for the medical side of it?
All right, so I want to talk about two things now. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about your definition and your use of free money. It's certainly not free money. There's no such thing that I'm aware of. I mean, you've been in financial services, so maybe you can point me in a direction where there is, but I'm not aware of. I'm not aware of any free money.
Well, the feds seem to be telling us there's free money.
Yeah, but Jim, I'm not sure you're aware of this or not. Maybe you are. But if we did nothing with regard to this question of Medicaid, in 2014 there will be approximately $1.5 billion of new. These are not old. These are not existing. These are all new. Affordable Care Act, Obamacare taxes that are being extracted out of Michigan and businesses and individuals right now today. $1.5 billion leaving the state if we did nothing. And so I don't call that free money.
Can you explain that? I don't quite understand it. Why would it be leaving?
Yeah, there's 27 different new taxes in the Affordable Care Act that have to do with things like medical products, medical instruments, taxes on health plans, and the list is long.
Yes.
And that money is and the effect of those taxes on just the state of Michigan for the 2014 calendar year is projected to be $1.5 billion.
Okay. So that's additional taxes from this Obamacare itself.
Yeah, it's all that we can't, until we kill it, until the Obamacare goes away and dies hopefully not from natural death, that extraction of taxes is leaving the state whether we like it or not.
Okay, so given that we've got this serious reduction in revenue, I guess you would call it, who is going to be paying the cost to administer the program at the state, county, and city level? Where will that money come from?
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to speak at the city and county level.
Okay.
At the state level, the department has assured us that they believe they have the staffing with the exception of a couple of IT areas to handle the enrollment process. And then additionally, we've given them a 2-year kind of a window. And, they can't exceed 1% of administrative costs, and you're familiar with administrative costs for insurance companies and because of your background, and you also know that 1% administrative costs for insurance company is best practice.
Okay, so the monies that come from the feds will, in fact, at least for the most part, cover the additional costs to administer the program at least the state level, and who knows what else. And
then, on top of that, Jim, in 2016, the number that's spent is capped for the administrative costs for the Department of Community Health, and from that point forward, it cannot grow more than, I forget the cost of living factor that we put into the legislation, but I don't know of another department in the state budget in any area that has a capped budget now set for it. Historically, it's almost always when the budget time rolls around, it's, well, what'd you spend last year? You know, what do you need more this year? And this in fact has an actual cap.
So won't that result in people wanting to get processed, waiting in longer and longer lines? I mean, if the amount's capped, then in fact there are going to be fewer people, or certainly not going to be cutting back in the pay. There are going to be fewer people to administer. That seems to me like just what we're seeing with the quotas.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you're getting to there. And you're thinking because it's a window of time here that people are going to be rushing to...
No. If you're capping the amount of money to be spent on administration, at some point, just the automatic increase in pay and benefits that happens from the administrator is going to either mean that the state's going to have to allocate more money, but you're telling me it's capped, or they're going to have to allocate fewer people to administer to the public.
Hey, Jim and Mike.
They should be allocating fewer people because they're not. There's so much opportunity within both Department of Health and Human Services and Department of Community Health in Michigan to apply technology to reduce costs. that they're not doing yet, and so they should be reducing their overhead.
Okay, Mike, do me a favor if you can. Let me keep you for just a little bit more, but
Sure.
we've got to go to a hard break, and we'll finish up with a couple more questions. And
Nope, I'll stay on.
we'll be right back, everybody. Thank you.
Not a statistic. Renegade River in Spring Lake has new and used handguns, hunting guns, sporting goods, and survival gear. Protect your rights and your freedom. Ask about their CPL classes. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Renegade River Show, and my name is Mike Hewitt, and my often co-host Jim Riley is in the studio, and on the air on the telephone with us today is State Representative Mike Shirkey from District 65. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mike.
Hey, what I wanted to do, if I could, is just kind of take the last few minutes and segue in a more political direction, if I might.
Okay.
The first is an easy question. Do you have what's your feeling on where the state Senate is on this topic? Do you think it'll pass or no?
I think it has a decent chance of passing, but I'm pleased to report to you. I'm not sure you'll be pleased to hear it, but I'm pleased to report to you that I've been working like daily since we got out of session for break with the work group, and we're adding some very robust additional reforms in from a transparency standpoint for the HMOs and also from an accountability standpoint for the enrollees that is going to make it even better. But to answer your question directly, I think that, if I was a betting man, I'd give it a 70% chance of passing.
Okay, here's my one of the issues I have, that it's a political thing that probably expands itself beyond the Medicaid explosion, as I affectionately refer to it as.
Yep.
If it passes, I am very, very convinced that there are going to be a lot of Republican primaries. And the problem that I have with that, other than the obvious, and by the way, just so I'm not hypocritical here, everyone needs to know that I once challenged an incumbent in a primary, so I'm not speaking out of school. I've got a little bit of experience my own self because of some issues. But in my little political world, there's about 5,000 activists that I have contact with, and those folks, I can't find any of them, literally none of the moderates, none of the naysayers. I can't find a single person that agrees with you on this issue, Mike. But my concern is that while some of our good state representatives and senators, whether they've gotten, you and I disagree, but from my vantage, whether they've gotten led down the primrose path and are wrong, they're probably going to get challenged. And what concerns me is that, as you and I know, take the House of Representatives, for example, there's roughly, 100-ish or so seats that are either going to be safe Democrat or safe Republican, and for us to maintain a majority, we've got to get a whiskey grip on those remaining 10 or 12. Is that right?
Yeah, there's about 15 or 17 that I would say are, in serious play that, we have to be aggressive on. So you're right.
And so while we have state representatives defending themselves from primary challenges over this particular issue, when in a normal cycle they'd be busy helping those other districts that are swing back and forth districts, I got to tell you, I'm afraid that Medicaid expansion places our state Senate and state House in play.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people think that, and it's certainly a prerogative of our political system in Michigan. But I just ask people just to take a breath and think about that. I mean, so you disagree with me on one vote, and you think that I drank the Kool-Aid and went over the edge on one vote, and so therefore we got to throw him out because he went over the edge on this, and so therefore what are you left with?
Yeah.
Now you can primary and go out and we got with term limits. I'm already talking with a long list, not a long list, 4 or 5 people who I hope will take a serious consideration of running for the office that I happen to be privileged to hold right now. Whether I get primaried in the next one or I am privileged to serve for the third term, but there just aren't that many people willing to put their life on pause, give up their personal life, and sometimes giving up their careers for a couple of years or up to 6 years. So I just ask, if one vote is enough to to say, okay, we're just going to primary all these guys and gals because they got this one wrong. And I'm kind of questioning that thinking.
I got to tell you, I over the course of each election cycle, I make a few endorsements, and you know this from experience, whenever you endorse somebody, you've got people that think it's a great endorsement and people that think you're nuts. And so in the past, for instance, I endorsed Pete Hoekstra, and I had folks from the classical libertarian side, and I had very conservative people that are saying, Mike, what are you doing endorsing Pete Hoekstra? He did this. And my answer to them was, well, I agree with him on about 95% of his votes. And their retort was, most often, it's the ones that you disagree on were the ones that turned our economy or our freedoms or our liberty or our incomes upside down. And I tell you that short story because Medicaid expansion, we're not debating about whether you and I disagree on the size of a stop sign. This is going to have some far-reaching economic effects in Michigan, and we don't agree on what the end result is, but we both have to understand the magnitude of it. It's a big vote, not just another daily vote.
I understand, Mike, and it is a line in the sand for a lot of people. I don't know if I heard I listened to you guys' Facebook broadcast. I don't know if it was a week or two ago, and you guys are talking about Obamacare and exchanges and Medicaid expansion and so forth. I don't know if you know this or not, but if you did some research and asked the question, who was the one state representative who bucked the governor the most to prevent us from implementing state-based exchanges, I think you'd be surprised to find out who that person was.
He was the guy that crossed over to the dark side on that one vote.
Yeah.
I'm teasing you a little bit, Mike.
But anyway, I don't disagree with your point because we could end up spending a lot of a lot of resources and fragment our ability to maintain majority if we do end up having a bunch of primaries over this issue. And obviously I don't hope that's not the outcome, but I understand that it certainly could be.
It feels like, looking in from the outside, Mike, it feels like I've often referred to Governor Snyder as our Bill Clinton without the good looks and the charisma, as the guy that always wants to be a little bit progressive, and we've had a state House and Senate that have held him in check and drawn him to good things like right to work against his will. But it feels like in this tug-of-war, the progressive side is winning, and frankly, I can't find another word but socialism when I look at Medicaid expansion. And I know you're not a socialist, so I'm not calling you that, but that's what it is that we're advancing.
Yeah, ultimately for me, and we're going to agree to disagree still, but for me, the downsides of doing nothing were worse than the upsides of aggressively doing something, and either way, it was a crappy. We had two choices, bad and worse, and so what have been trying to do, is make a bad one a little better, but it's never going to be good. Neither choices are good, and so I'm doing my best to share the process and the journey and how I went from a no to I'm going to use the word again, Mike, a no to a complex yes.
Well, I would just say, Representative Shirkey, I really appreciate your passion and your honesty. I disagree again. I do think for some people, I disagree with the concept of one vote and you're out. But I do think for a lot of people that this Obamacare issue is such a major issue that, sadly, many Michigan Republican voters do view it as one and out, and we'll have to find out what goes on. But you have really been a stand-up guy. I appreciate your being on the show.
Well, thanks, you guys, and I hope you can get out of the studio soon enough to go out and enjoy some of this beautiful weather.
Listen, you got to picture this. When I get off the air, I'm going back out to meet my daughters and 7 grandkids of 7 of 9. They're all running around in a state park out on Lake Michigan, and that's going to be the rest of my afternoon. But hey, let me join in Jim's chorus. You and I don't agree on this particular topic. I think you've been a brilliant state representative. Other than that, and I appreciate your integrity for coming on to the debate.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jim. You guys have a great day.
Very good. Thank you.
Right, bye-bye.
Mr. Riley, are you going to be on here next week?
Oh, good golly. I might be able to. Let me... Yeah,
Oscar thinks we should shoot him.
Oscar thinks I ought to be the new Trayvon, but I think I probably could make it.
And everyone would find him innocent.
Well, it's fun to be on with you guys.
Very nice. Folks, I appreciate you joining in today, and I will look forward to being here with Jim Riley and Oscar next Sunday at noon. And everyone out in Vegas, Brenda Brown and all that, happy Sunday. We'll talk to everybody soon.